I caught my wife cheating at her summer writing workshop, so I hired a cake, got evidence, and disappeared without a trace before she returned. I go by Andrew Baker, but my colleagues call me AB. Some annoying drunk or ignorant guy always tries to act too familiar and calls me Andy. So Andy, what's your job? I tell them I create a gadget that cops can use from 40 feet away to check for drunk people. They've even started putting them on radars around town, which usually shuts them up. But you've figured out that gadget isn't real. I'm pretty straightforward. I like a simple life and find satisfaction in my work. I'm an engineer for a large national company with offices all over the country. I have friends, and while I don't drink a lot, I do enjoy the occasional beer. I'd say I'm more of a nacho person, though. That's my challenge. If I let it get out of control, I gain weight. So, I try to keep myself in decent shape for my age. I used to go sailing all the time, but having a wife and 2 young daughters takes up a lot of time. So, I eventually sold the boat. That was just one of the compromises I've made. I've made a lot of compromises over the years so I could spend time with the people that really matter to me. I've been happily married to Karen for 25 years. She's a high school teacher. Our 2 daughters are 5 and 7, and I'm still trying to find a way to make it work. Karen's been a high school teacher for 25 years, and our 2 daughters are now in college. Claire's at Brown University in Rhode Island, and her younger sister, Denise, is at Boston University. I probably couldn't have afforded those expensive schools, but luckily the girls are great students and have managed to get some impressive scholarships. We live in North Carolina, in an area called the Research Triangle. It's centered around some great universities in Raleigh and surrounded by top-notch high-tech companies. I could tell you about Carolina barbecue, but it would just make me hungry. I was a little bummed when the girls picked colleges up north, but I get that they needed to branch out beyond their comfort zone, which is a good thing. Our daughters are incredible. They're smart, funny, and charming with strong moral values. As they grew up and started taking their first steps toward independence, my wife and I finally had some time to ourselves again. I've been looking forward to this stage for a while, now that both girls were away at college. I thought I'd be coming home every night to a loving wife who'd focus her attention on me, and vice versa. I thought we'd get back to a good place, which led to some happy days. As it turned out, though, things didn't play out quite as I'd imagined. Looking back on that first year of an empty nest, I noticed that Karen was changing. It seemed like her interests were changing, and while it was a slow shift, it became more noticeable over time. Karen is an English teacher with a specialty in creative writing. To be fair, she's also a frustrated writer. As a young mother and teacher, she's never really had the chance to write as much as she'd like. I enjoy reading her writing, but as a writer, she's never gone beyond formulaic and sometimes overly dramatic stories. She has a romanticized idea of what a writer should be, and I suspect she's more attracted to the idea of being a writer than to the actual act of writing. If she's satisfied, I'm satisfied. Also, for most of our marriage, Karen has been a member of various writing groups. These are gatherings of people who come together to help each other by offering critiques, suggestions, and discussions of their work. The goal is to improve each other's writing. Some of these groups have been really productive, while others seem more like mutual admiration clubs. I tried to join once, but Karen and a few others weren't on board, so I stopped trying. Karen's current writing group has about 10 members, including both men and women. I like some of them, but I'm not a fan of others. Half of them are pretty unremarkable, while the other half make a strong impression when you meet them. For example, Reggie, a woman, is very impressive. I've read all her books and enjoyed them. Betty has a knack for writing fantasy. She doesn't see herself as the next J.K. Rowling, though. She's more into the talking unicorn genre. She's friendly, and her writing seems to be mainly for her own enjoyment. I don't see any reason to argue with that. A little of that goes a long way, but other than that, he seems fine. Then there's Frank. I was a bit taken aback when I first met him, and those alarms have been ringing in my head ever since. When I met Frank, it was pretty clear that I felt like I was being introduced to him, not the other way around. He looked at me and asked, "Andy, what's your profession?" I looked at my wife, who gave me a slight frown and shook her head. I simply replied, "I'm an engineer." Did Frank offer a smile? I said that I'd given up trying to engage with their group. I prefer to stay somewhat hidden and unobtrusive, though not exactly out of earshot. When they visit, I'm often in the next room quietly working or on the back porch with the window open so I can hear their conversation until they forget I'm there. I noticed early on that when Frank talks to Karen, they seem to share private jokes and a connection that makes me feel a bit uncomfortable. Sometimes he gives her a boost, and other times it's as if he knows her inner thoughts in a way I don't appreciate. He refers to past conversations that seem to be just between them, and I get the impression that the rest of the group doesn't remember those moments. It's just a feeling, but I don't like it. I told her, but she just brushed off my concerns. I've learned not to push the matter. I've made sure she understands my feelings, but the rest is up to her. The group follows a routine during their meetings after work. They have a routine during their meetings after their work session. They relax with some wine and unwind. It's during this time that I realized I think some of them are just putting on an act. It happened in the middle of the spring semester around early March. The topic shifted to the lifestyle of real writers. All the famous writers were alcoholics. That's right, they wrote in the mornings and drank in the afternoons and evenings. Is that how you relax and open your mind to new ideas? Then in the morning, their creative thoughts start flowing and they start writing. In fact, all the really accomplished writers have been in a romantic relationship at some point, which has really motivated them. That's what Frank was saying. Thanks for sharing that, Frank. I think I'm starting to understand what you mean. That's when Karen's words hit me like a punch in the gut. Oh, absolutely. It's the intensity and thrill of the unknown. The excitement of keeping it all hidden from everyone. Some of them laughed while others didn't, so I figured it was just a joke. But I kept an ear to their conversation for the rest of the evening. Maybe we should all have a wild night of passion. And then we'll each write the next great American novel, which was Bill's idea. I wasn't sure if he was joking or not. Outstanding stories have qualities like humanity, empathy, and a willingness to confront the mysteries of the unknown. As I said earlier, I like Betty. Unforgettable stories are about overcoming challenges, striving for greatness against all odds, and making the world a better place. Well, if we cast the right spell, we can avoid any trouble with Frank again, which would be to her shame. Some people in the group seem to find that amusing. I'm not so sure that's the case. Betty did, and I had a feeling Reggie didn't. They were chatting about writers' drinking habits and affairs, and I was listening in without letting on, when I heard a really interesting bit of their conversation. Is anyone else planning to apply for the Illinois Writers' Workshop this summer? Frank was chatting away again. I've already submitted my application, so I'm hoping they'll accept me. The program lasts 6 weeks and is all about writing and discussing with other writers. I'm sure they'll accept you. Your writing has improved so much in the past year. I think you'll get in. I also applied, but I'm not sure I'll be selected because the quality of the work was not up to par. Frank, I'm surprised at how humble you're being. I didn't like what I was hearing, but at the time I still cared deeply for and trusted my wife. When you're married, trust is fundamental. You don't question if you're not up to no good. That's not even on your radar. Marriage is a partnership. Your spouse is your other half. She's shown her commitment year after year. You just want her to find success and happiness. Over time, I decided to put the conversation I overheard that evening to one side. I had full confidence in my wife. Some younger guys might not get that, but after being married for over 20 years, confidence becomes a way of life, not just a choice. It was the end of April, and I was finishing up some gardening outside when I decided to call it a day and head inside. As I reached for the kitchen door, I overheard my wife on the phone saying, "I can't wait 6 whole weeks with no responsibilities, no obligations, and no one waiting for me to come back." I perked up at that last part. I froze in place and listened. Absolutely, it's going to be the most self-indulgent 6 weeks of my life. This is going to be the most self-indulgent 6 weeks of my life. I owe it to myself and you owe it to yourself too. I wasn't happy about it. I pushed the door open and walked into the kitchen. Karen seemed startled. "I have to go," she said. "AB is here, and I have to start preparing dinner." She hung up. Who was that on the phone? Oh, just Reggie. We were talking about school ending soon. I thought, that can't be right. I wanted to question her about certain things she had said, especially the part about no one waiting for me to come home. But I feel that the truth will come out later. Later that night, after dinner, the other shoe dropped. AB, I have some great news to share with you. Do you remember that writer's workshop in Illinois that I applied for? Come on, you barely pay attention to me. Be honest. I'd heard about that workshop before, but only because I overheard her talking about it that night, over a month ago. It's a great opportunity, and I've been accepted. That sounds great, honey. I'm sure we can make it work financially. I might be able to take some time off work and join you. I'd love to hear the writers talk. I'm surprised. Oh, well, we can think about it. It's going to be a really intense 6 weeks, and I'm not going to have much free time to spend with you. My instincts were tingling again. Well, I'm not demanding, and maybe I could be the coffee guy for the group. She offered a slightly nervous smile. That could be nice, dear. Let's see how it goes. I've been on the receiving end of such deflections before, and I knew what it meant. She was planning to make sure I didn't end up going to Illinois with her. I get the feeling you'd rather I didn't go with you. Oh no, it's not like that. I'm just afraid you might find it boring. You're into computers and circuits, and that's just writers talking about big ideas. Back then, I didn't say it, but I was thinking it loud enough for the whole neighborhood to hear. I'm not unintelligent, honey. I didn't mean it like that. I'm just saying your mind leans towards details. Writers grapple with bigger life questions. I kept the thought in my head. Later that evening, after Karen had gone to bed, I checked our phone records online. It records all incoming and outgoing calls and text messages. I checked the phone log and saw that the call I had interrupted wasn't with Reggie. If it was from Frank's phone. It's pretty incredible how quickly trust can erode after 25 years of marriage, when you catch your wife in a lie and realize she's making plans to exclude you. It was a few weeks before she seemed to move on from the workshop. I tried a few times to suggest going with her or visiting at some point, but she shot down the idea each time. Then she went from rationalization to manipulation. And Jake, 2 tickets to a fishing camp in northern Canada at the end of June. You can take Jake and you can both enjoy fishing for those big brown fish. We should talk about it. It was quite expensive, but I wanted to thank you for understanding about the writing workshop. I felt a little guilty that you wouldn't enjoy yourself, so I want you to go and have a great time. Then we can share our experiences when I get back. I had a feeling something was up. Thanks, dear. That's not right. Thanks for understanding, dear. I appreciate it. I'd have a better time with you. AB, we've been through this. It's just not logical. I'll be working all the time, and I'd feel bad neglecting you like that. I briefly studied her face and eyes, trying to interpret what I saw. Was it conned? Thanks, honey. Canada sounds fun. I was thinking about my options, and a surprise trip to Illinois was at the top of the list. Well, you could at least say it with a smile. I want you to be happy. Those tickets were expensive, and I'm sure you'll have a great time. I spent the rest of the evening reading. Our house is old and has a floor grate in the hallway. It lets warm air out of the furnace room and was the original way to heat the first floor. At first, I made a point of not stepping on it accidentally, but over time I got used to it and forgot it was there. The phone is. I was working in the basement, thinking about my next steps, when I heard Karen on the phone. Yes, I gave him the tickets. He's still hesitating. I don't know. I keep telling him he won't like it. No, I can't just tell him not to come. I understand and I want that too, but I want to stay married after that. I just need him to give me some space to enjoy myself for a while. A few weeks is all I'm asking for. I've earned it. I want those weeks with you as much as you do. I'm not clueless. I know infidelity when I hear it. Either Karen was having an affair or she was considering one. Anything less and she'd still have a lot of explaining to do. It took me 20 minutes to gather my thoughts, but I knew that for now I had to become the kind of liar I'd always despised. For now, I had to keep my intentions hidden until I figured out my plan. I called upstairs and said, Karen, I'm going over to see Jake and give him the good news. Oh, that's great, dear. Enjoy. I was out the basement door in no time. Visiting Jake was just an excuse. I needed someone to confide in, and Jake had been my closest friend since childhood. Jake never beat you up? Are you kidding me? Jake never beats around the bush. No way. I don't buy it. She would never betray you. Well, she's certainly working hard to keep me away from that workshop. And she's calling someone baby, and it's definitely not me. We just sat there. In silence, that's what most guys need from a buddy. Just sitting there, sharing the pain. You need to have a conversation with her about this. AB, you can't go through the next few months assuming the worst without knowing the truth. What's she going to do? I bet you anything that when I checked the phone records tonight, it wasn't Frank she was talking to. It wasn't Frank she was calling baby. And it wasn't Frank she was plotting with. I'm not making that bet, so what's your plan? I'm gonna sit down and have an honest conversation. That's what you do after 25 years together. I'm gonna tell her how much I love her, that I'm hurt that she doesn't want me to go with her, and I'm gonna ask her straight out what she wants to do with me. What are the chances she'll be honest with you? I'm not sure she'll believe me, but I'll tell her the truth. Even if some of it isn't what she wants to hear, she'll understand how much I love her. She'll know that cheating on me would end our relationship. Then she'll probably try to convince me that I'm imagining things and that I should just go fishing. I wanted to let you know that I have 2 tickets to a fishing camp. I'm here to support you, my friend. I had to laugh when I realized where his loyalties lie. We chatted, shared our thoughts, and had a few drinks over the next 3 hours before I headed home. After dinner, I asked Karen to sit with me in the living room, and I opened up about everything that was bothering me, well, almost everything. I have some serious concerns that I'd like to discuss. I don't think you've been completely forthcoming with me about this writer's workshop. I heard you talking about it with your writers group back in March, but you didn't mention it to me until you'd already made plans to attend. I even overheard you talking about how affairs are common among great writers. And I have to admit, I didn't find that amusing. I find it amusing that you've been talking to Frank about your trip. However, when I inquire, you give me false information and claim it's someone else. You also seem to know my feelings about that guy. Furthermore, when you told me about getting accepted, you seemed deliberately distant and discouraged me from being a part of it. It seems like you've made plans for me to be somewhere else without even discussing it with me. It feels like you're trying to make sure that I won't be around while you're in Illinois. I don't think you've been completely honest with me, and I'm starting to question whether you've been completely faithful, AB. I've never treated you like that, and I would never be unfaithful to you. What's gotten into you? You're my husband, and all I want is for you to have a good time. It really hurts me that you could think that about me. I can't control how I feel or what triggers those feelings. You know, I love you. I've loved you since we first met, but you can't just brush off the idea of betrayal. Karen, you're planning to betray me. Is this writer's workshop supposed to be your escape from our marriage? That was the end of our conversation. No more understanding or loving talk. She exploded into screaming, and for the rest of the night it was either screaming or silence from her. For the following week it was all silence. She used the silent treatment, but that didn't work. In fact, it only reinforced my beliefs. I realized that I wasn't making any progress this way, so I finally allowed her to believe that she had succeeded. If she was going to cheat, there wasn't much I could do to stop it. In fact, the phone conversation I overheard suggested that she might have already done it. As soon as she got what she wanted, she quickly changed her attitude and acted like a loving wife to make sure I was on my best behavior. It was like she'd flipped a switch, which only made me more suspicious. The workshop I was going to was in Illinois, about 500 miles away, and I didn't know anyone there. I asked a colleague who he'd gone to when he suspected his wife of cheating. I followed his advice and found out that the person he recommended was in Illinois. The participants would eat in the campus cafeterias, visit local bars, and stay in a large dormitory with other students. This gave me a chance to keep an eye on things without being too obvious. Some of these students would actually be working for me with the right equipment as the school year went on. As the school year wrapped up, our daughters opted to stay at their universities over the summer to work in research labs with their professors. This meant we were still empty nesters, so I made a point of inviting them to dinners I cooked at home and taking them to various shows. They seemed to enjoy everything, and I started to believe I was making progress. But whenever I expressed my love for her, she just gave me this dismissive, I know attitude. Little by little, everything fell into place. It wasn't that she had stopped loving me. She had simply taken me for granted. I was her go-to guy. She knew she could count on me. She felt safe to go away, seek excitement, take a break from our marriage, and I would be waiting. This realization led to my plans falling into place on the day she left. I realized I couldn't leave things unspoken. We stood near the door as her shuttle to the airport arrived, holding her tightly. I expressed my love and begged her, "Please don't do anything that could ruin us." In response, she shot me an irritated look. I got an irritated look and replied, "I'm tired of you not trusting me." She gave me a quick kiss on the cheek, grabbed her bags, and headed for the shuttle. She drove off without even looking back at me. At that moment, I knew my marriage was coming to an end. After 25 years and 2 grown daughters, our relationship seemed to be fading away without much fanfare. When she got to the workshop, Karen must have taken off her wedding rings on the plane, because they weren't on her finger. She was open about being recently divorced, and my wife and Frank were inseparable. They were inseparable, constantly together, sharing kisses, holding hands, and acting like high school sweethearts. My PI put a small video camera in the hallway of the dorm where they were staying. Karen and Frank each had their own room, but they only used one of them sometimes. They used her room, sometimes his, but they always spent the nights together. I already knew what was going on in these shared dorm rooms, but my PI and his team went to great lengths to confirm my suspicions. One evening before dark, my wife and Frank retired early. 2 agents, looking like typical college students, sat against the hallway wall and discreetly slipped a miniature fisheye camera under the door. The video quality was excellent, and when he finished, it was clear that he hadn't used protection. This was the last straw for me. I was done with Merritt. Anything else the team uncovered was just more evidence to back up my position. I wanted to become a non-factor by the time she returned. I would be gone and there would be no going back. No more lies, no more ultimatums, no more long talks, explanations, justifications, or attempts to make things right. There would only be divorce. I decided to get a divorce. My marriage was over. Love doesn't fade quickly. But what is love without trust? A future can't exist with a cheating wife. Some might say my solution was weak. They might suggest she deserved physical punishment, utter embarrassment, and complete destitution. But the law would prevent me from pursuing any of that, and I had no intention of ruining the rest of my life. To ruin the rest of my life by seeking such vindictive revenge on my unfaithful wife and her lover. My revenge would be to take away the one thing she had always depended on. The steady presence that supported her, comforted her, uplifted her, and motivated her. I took myself away. Frank wasn't a worthy catch. He couldn't provide what she needed in the long run. Where would I have gotten a divorce 50 years ago? At 50, where would a divorced mother in my situation find love and emotional stability? I wasn't worried. She wasn't my concern anymore. Every few days, my private investigator sent me more pictures, videos, and evidence of betrayal by the person who had promised me loyalty. He's always texting me about the fish he's catching and how amazing it is up there. He thanks me almost every day. She said with a laugh, "He's clueless." Frank joined in the laughter. Keep him in the dark. Keep him in the dark. Keep him in the dark. Treat him like a mushroom, and you'll be free of his annoyance. He might as well enjoy himself for now. When I get back, I'm going to confront that nerd about his accusations. How dare he keep accusing me of cheating? Are you taking a little break from our marriage? Or is that another woman sharing my bed every night? Maybe he's onto something, but I won't stand for it. I'm a writer, and he's holding me back with his circuits and computer jargon, millimeters, and micro thingamajigs. What does he know about big ideas? Update 3. I thought about different ways I could get revenge. I realized that none of these options would truly satisfy me as long as my life remained tied to hers. So I started to distance myself from her. I had a frank conversation with my boss, explaining everything. He understood, having gone through something similar not long ago. He arranged for me. I was offered a transfer to our company's office in Portland, Maine, and I thought it was a great opportunity. I knew the people there, they were skilled and professional, and I enjoyed their company. The city and the state both appealed to me, so I hired movers to move half of my furniture and all of my personal belongings. I made sure my car was in good shape for the trip. Then I spoke with an attorney to start the divorce process. In terms of finances, Karen had her own insurance and retirement account, so I removed her name from all my assets and made my daughter the beneficiary. She'd keep her car, but she'd have to handle her own insurance. I planned to handle the bank accounts and credit cards closer to the end. I kept my intentions discreet. From that moment on, I focused on strengthening my resolve. What I mean by that is I tried to call her to inquire how the workshop was going and to express my love. I believed that hearing her lies would strengthen my conviction that my actions were justified. As expected, she didn't disappoint. She replied enthusiastically, expressed her affection, and rushed off to dinner in less than 2 minutes. My private investigator later let me know that Frank was right there with her, giving each other knowing glances and mocking gestures that only confirmed my decision. I decided to text her instead of calling because I wasn't sure I could keep my emotions in check over the phone. I'd let her know about the successful fishing trips, but really I was sending Jake and his wife on those trips, and they had a great time. A friend who works in real estate gave me a for sale sign to put in the front yard. I couldn't really sell the house without her consent, especially since I had already transferred ownership to her. But she was unaware of that detail. When she returned home, the sign would be the first thing she noticed. I changed the locks on the house to make it feel less like a home. I picked out some photos from her trip, including some explicit stills from the video taken under Frank's door, and put together a copy of the Pies report. I left everything on the dining room table to show her that her actions had been exposed. The majority of my belongings had already been relocated by the moving company, who would store them until I was ready to retrieve them. I took my laptop and guitar with me. I couldn't trust anything so precious to anyone else while Frank might be involved with my wife. I loved my guitar. My original plan was to leave the next morning, knowing she wouldn't return until later that night. That way, I'd be gone when she arrived. But I had a change of heart the night before. I wanted her to know how much it hurt. I sent her an email with 3 carefully selected photos of her and Frank along with the words, "Divorce you. I divorce you. I divorce you right away," while she was waiting and worrying until she returned. I picked one photo of them on the dance floor, looking pretty intimate, and it was clear she wasn't wearing her rings. The third was a screenshot from the dorm room video that clearly showed her face. I expected her to see these pictures and hoped it would tarnish her last romantic night with Frank as they frantically searched for cameras that had already been removed. Afterwards, I turned off my phone and left the house that had been our family home for countless years with a mixture of pain, uncertainty, and newfound freedom. I wasn't sure when or why, but it felt like she'd died, even though I hadn't caused it. The woman who looked like my wife was someone I didn't know and didn't want to get to know. In the midst of the deep sense of loss, there was a strange sense of liberation. The weight of deception, betrayal, and belittlement lifted from my shoulders, if only temporarily. The only price was that half of my life was now inaccessible. Even though it was late, my mind was racing, so I drove along the quiet highway for about 100 miles, lost in thought, until I found a hotel for the night. I was looking for a local breakfast spot that served something authentic. I finally found it, and enjoyed what might be my last plate of grits for quite some time as I savored those grits. My thoughts shifted, and I began to reconsider my trip to Maine. This was the beginning of I was starting a new chapter, and I had a long drive ahead of me. I could have rushed to Maine and tried to escape my problems, but I had 2 options. I decided to take it slow, enjoying the scenery as I drove north, engaging with each state and its people as I passed through. This week is all about making the transition from my old life to my new one. I'm going to indulge my senses, including my taste buds, to get rid of the bad stuff from my past and get ready for a fresh start. I spent the rest of the day wandering through Williamsburg with all the summer crowds, checking out the work of skilled artisans and craftspeople. I wondered how she'd react when she saw the "For Sale" sign on the front lawn and realized her keys wouldn't open the door anymore. The next day, I headed north on the back roads to Annapolis, Maryland's capital. I passed through small towns and historic plantations along Virginia's ancestral rivers, the York and Pamunkey. The Rainick and Pomac rivers flow into the Chesapeake Bay, and there was a single stretch of road ahead of me that would lead me to my future. I would follow that winding path as it led me away from betrayal and into a new chapter of my life. Update 4. Sitting in my hotel room in downtown Annapolis, I finally turned on my cell phone. As expected, it was filled with numerous missed calls, emails, and text messages. Most of them were from Karen and a few were from friends. I read and listened to all of them even though it was tough. It was a necessary step. First, Karen tried to convince me that things were not as they seemed. That didn't seem very likely, given that those were the messages she sent from Illinois before she returned home and saw the rest of the photos and read the PI's report. Jake and his wife knew, but I kept the others in the dark on purpose. I'd let them know as soon as I was settled. I knew I couldn't be a ghost forever. The 2 calls that worried me were from my daughters, Karen. I hadn't told them about my decision to leave their mother because I wanted to do it face to face, but I couldn't let them worry, so I spoke to my daughters and explained the situation to them calmly. They were upset and found it hard to believe that their mother could do such a thing, so I sent them the same pictures I had sent Karen the night I left. I sent Karen the night I left home, along with a PI's report for them to read. After that, they promised not to tell their mother about my actions. There was one more missed call. My lawyer told me that Karen had been officially served with divorce papers. Now she knew I was serious. He also told me that Frank's wife had received a complete set of photos, videos, and audio recordings of his 6 years of marriage. On the 3rd day of my trip, I drove through northern Maryland and finally reached New Jersey. Well, not quite. I crossed into New Jersey but didn't stop until I reached Connecticut. Once in Connecticut, I took a quick detour.